Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I welcome each and every one of you to this event on decarbonizing the chemical and petrochemical industry and its importance for meeting the climate goals. Now, from the program, you will see that we were supposed to have a vice minister. I just want to inform, maybe before we start, just to say that I am Pemi Gasela. I am the member of the Technology Executive Committee, and I will be moderating this session. And just to tender apologies, we'll unfortunately not have Honorable Geraldo Alquim, the Vice President and Minister of Development, Industry, Trade and Service of Brazil, and Mr. Maximiliano Bruno, Vice Minister of Chile's Ministry of Environment, were not able to join us due to other unexpected and urgent commitment, but they have a representative, I think. Now, maybe just to speak about this event, this is organized jointly between the UNFCCC Tech as well as UNIDO and the government of Japan's meeting. And this is continuity from COP29. We also had a session like this. For this year, it will focus on chemicals and petrochemicals. Now, the objectives of this session is to inform parties on technology, policy, and support options for hard-to-abate industry as they develop and implement their nationally determined contribution. Now, I'm going to have a high-level panel, which is already here, and we're going to have opening remarks. But before we do that, let me first introduce you to Ms. Nora Hamlaji, Deputy Executive Secretary, UN Climate Change. And on next to her, we have Mr. Jiong Zhou, a Deputy Director General and Managing Director, Directorate of Technical Cooperation and Sustainable Industry Development, UNIDO. And another keynote speech from Ambassador Julio Loreno from Chile, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now I'll just hand over to Ms. Nora to give us, if we can give her a round of applause, please.
Excellencies, so first of all, can you hear me well? Yes. Excellencies, colleagues, friends, it is a pleasure to welcome you today and to be here with you in Belém, a city where we are reminded that human ingenuity must work in harmony with nature. I mean, that's what we learned from being at the heart of the Amazon. Today's focus on the chemical and petrochemical industries goes to the heart of the challenge. These sectors provide the foundation of modern life, from the fertilizers that feed us to the materials that house, heal, and connect us. But they are also among the largest and fastest growing sources of industrial greenhouse gas emissions. So these are high stakes for us, and it's a very important sector. Without deep transformation in how we produce and how we use chemicals, we cannot achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. The good news is the solution exists. We have proven technologies from renewable hydrogen and carbon capture to circular chemistry and sustainable feedstocks. We have the policies, we have the partnerships that can scale them up. And we have growing example of success across every region in the world. What we need now is the speed and the scale that is needed. We need stronger collaboration between governments, and industry, so that innovation moves from the laboratory to the marketplace, and from a handful of countries, which is the case at the moment, to the whole world. And we need to ensure that developing nations can access this technology, the finance, but also the capacity they need to be full participants in this industrial transformation. Because decarbonizing industry is not just about the statistics. We know it should be also about people. One of the early slogans of this COP was by the President Lula was the COP of truth, the COP of action, but also the COP with the human face. And that's why also the work needs to be about people. It is about the workers and communities whose livelihood depend on these sectors. A just transition must be built into every plan and must be built into every policy, ensuring that change is fair, inclusive, and creates new opportunities in cleaner industries. I would like here to acknowledge the work of the Technology Executive Committee, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization that is represented with us today, and the government of Japan, also present with us today. They are showing how that collaboration can work, and collaboration is needed for success, turning policy ideas into industrial solutions that deliver real progress on the ground. And I would like to extend special appreciation to the government of Germany for its continued support of the text's vital work on industrial transformation. Dear friends, COP30 is a moment of acceleration. The science is clear and the direction is right, but the pace must now match the urgency that we are all talking about. Across all sectors, including industry, the world must move from second gear to fourth gear, scaling innovation, aligning the investment behind it, and that would lead to accelerating implementation. Let us use today's discussion to help drive that acceleration by building bridges between technology and policy, between innovation and inclusion, between ambition and action, the COP of action again. Together we can transform industry from one of the hardest to abate sectors into one of the greatest engines of sustainable growth. Together we can show that climate cooperation continues to deliver, not just on paper or in conferences, but in factories, on the ground, supply chains, and communities around the world. And I would like also to make an important announcement. Today's event is the first of a series of 2 events, and we will have tomorrow in the Pavilion of Japan, the wonderful Pavilion of Japan, the continuation of this discussion. So I really invite you all to meet us there tomorrow and continue this very important discussion. I thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you very much, Ms. Hamlaji. We'll now call Mr. Zhu to give us your keynote address.
Excellencies, esteemed delegates, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to join you today at the COP30 Technology Day on Transformative Industry here in Berlin. This event built on last year's success at COP29, which focused on decarbonizing steel and cement. And now we turn to chemical and the petrochemical industries. I want to thank the UNFCCC Technology Executive Committee for convening this important forum in partnership with UNIDO and the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan, METI. I also extend my gratitude to the government of Brazil for hosting us in this beautiful city and for championing our shared climate goals. As you know, cutting industrial greenhouse gas emission is vital to achieving the 1.5-degree target. The industry sector accounts for roughly 34% of global emissions. Hard-to-abate industries like steel, cement, chemicals, and petrochemicals together consume nearly 60% of industrial energy and produce about 70% of the sector's emissions. The chemical and the petrochemical industries alone generate substantive process emissions. Yet, for all its difficulties, this challenge is also an opportunity. Because as mentioned by the Deputy Secretary General of the UNFCCC Secretariat, now chemicals, petrochemicals are an essential part of our life, our daily life. We cannot live without it. But the thing is that how to deal with this, the emissions. So that's why I think now actually, fortunately, solutions are available. Yeah, to decarbonize these industries. UNIDO is advancing industrial decarbonization through a broad portfolio of initiatives like the link policy alignment, technology deployment, and partnership building to help heavy industries move toward net zero. UNIDO supports decarbonization of industries through various initiatives and projects. UNIDO is extending also its effort to the chemical and petrochemical sectors, promoting the use of clean fuels and feedstocks, greater process electrification and energy efficiency, circular production models. By driving innovation and green industry solutions, we can build a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future for all. Through collaboration and investment, we can make these low-carbon technologies the new normal across the globe. Esteemed delegates, UNIDO, as a special agency of the United Nations to promote industrial development, is fully committed to supporting this transformation. We drive the sustainable transformation of industry by providing innovative solutions. We are working closely with emerging and developing economies to deploy cutting-edge technologies. We know that combating the climate crisis also requires scaling up investment in green industry. That is why UNIDO promotes technology transfer and increase access to climate finance for developing countries. We also foster green and circular economy approaches that maximize resource efficiency, minimize waste, and redesign production cycles for a climate-resilient future. Importantly, this industrial transition must be inclusive and just. We need to create opportunities for all countries and communities to benefit from green industrial growth. This means forging multi-stakeholder partnerships between governments, industries, academia, investors, international organizations to mobilize the necessary financing and innovation, particularly in developing nations. UNIDO places a special focus on supporting women and young people as leaders and practitioners in sustainable industrial transition, so that our collective efforts draw on all talents. For hard-to-abate sectors like chemicals and petrochemicals, clear benchmarks will also be crucial. We need robust standards and labels to define what no and near zero emission production really means. By establishing clear criteria for climate-friendly production and products, we can get industries and consumers towards truly sustainable choices. I am pleased that today's Technology Day will gather inputs to accelerate decarbonization of chemical and petrochemicals industries. In closing, UNIDO stands ready to continue working hand in hand with all of you from the Technology Executive Committee and our partners in government and industry to civil society and finances to turn these ambitions into reality. So together through innovation, partnerships, and unwavering commitment to inclusivity, we can transform the chemical and petrochemical industries from major emitters into champions of green growth. Let us seize the moment of this Technology Day and of COP30 to accelerate action for a net zero, inclusive, industrial future. Lastly, I just want to add one more sentence. Because for technology, and we know that for the green transition, this is crucial. Some technologies are not yet maybe available or accessible to everybody. But we need now firstly invest in this steel sector to find a kind of affordable solution. But in addition to this, we need to really spend more efforts on this kind of promoting this available, affordable technology that particular to the global south. And now today we have the focus on petrochemicals and petrochemicals. This is, I think, approach from my personal level of very much because of what? Now when we talk about, say, break down your ambition for CO2 emissions, you need to think about each and every sector, how to tackle those sectors one by one. That's why for the global environment, I think this kind of agreement implementation, I would say Montreal Protocol is the most successful. You see why they could achieve that level of success? Because they have a very, very focused approach on those sectors, and particularly refrigeration, right, cooling. Now for us, broadly speaking, for the whole economy, if we want to achieve this 1.5 degree, this target, we need to focus on the hard-to-abate sectors. Now, firstly, technology, we need to invest further. Secondly, most importantly, that to identify those affordable, available technologies that to promote them to also attract the investment. So this is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zong. Ambassador Coreno, your keynote address, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I bring the apologies from our Vice Minister of Environment, Mr. Maximiliano Proaño, who unfortunately could not be here, although he wanted to share some of his thoughts with all of you. And it's very easy and great to speak after the previous speakers that have presented such a broad and conceptual scenario of opportunities and also of challenges in this important sector and activities. From our side, Chile is firmly committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 and to the full effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. And we see in this context that industrial decarbonization is an essential element of this transition, as it is critical for aligning our world with a 1.5 degree pathway. This is why we continue to emphasize the urgent need for more ambitious, robust climate policies, and most importantly, their implementation across all sectors to achieve our shared goals. The industrial sector presents us with a challenge, as it is responsible for a significant share of global emissions, as has just been said, but they are hard to abate sectors. And yet, at the same time, these same sectors provide essential materials for the clean technologies and sustainable infrastructures that we need. And just to give an example, as you may know, wind turbines are very intensive in materials. And a wind turbine that is established on land requires 300, 400 metric tons of steel, and it's many-fold that number if you install it offshore. It can get to 2,500 or even more metric tons of steel. So we need that industry, but at the same time, we need that industry to be decarbonized. And the industrial sector presents us with the international cooperation is especially critical for this trade-exposed, emissions-intensive industrial good, and the only way to maximize climate benefits while ensuring a level playing field consistent with the principles of the conventions of the Paris Agreement. This requires developed countries to take the lead with flexibility and support that allows developing countries to follow. And I wanted to also to refer to many initiatives and opportunities that have been created. And for example, we have our own experience that we've been leading the so-called Climate Club with Germany. That's been already 2 years in the implementation of standards, regulations, and means of implementation for decarbonizing steel and cement. Overall, the Climate Club already have 45 member states, and has created a forum really to exchange experiences and agreeing on certain policies and interoperability of standards. So the petrochemical and chemical sector are an important part of all this transformation. We need a massive scale-up of markets for near zero and low emission materials, and we must all highlight the powerful economic opportunities this transition offers. International cooperation is the key to ensuring that this transition creates equitable economic benefits, allowing all countries to thrive in these emerging markets. In the case of Chile, our own petrochemical and chemical sector is modest in size. Our emissions from that sector is only about 350,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. But at the same time, while small, the sector is a diverse and proactive industry that collaborates with the government, such as the Global Plastics Treaty process. In fact, its largest association of this industry in Chile recently made certification in the Responsible Care standard mandatory for all its members, which we see as a powerful voluntary commitment to safety and environmental management. And while this industry is modest, we have an important story of innovation to share. Following the implementation of our Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, our plastic sector committed a voluntary clean production agreement with the government. The goal was to implement circular economy strategies and actively promote the replacement of virgin plastic resin with recycled resin, which was essential for absorbing the new supply of materials the EPR law was creating. This initiative was so successful that our industry not only absorbed the domestic supply of recycled resin, but actually became a net importer of it, turning a waste stream into a valuable low-emission material and a new economic pathway. We share this story to showcase that no matter the size of the sector, meaningful and transformative efforts can be made. We invite all nations here to embrace that spirit of innovation and cooperation. We deeply appreciate the work of the UNFCCC Technology Executive Committee, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, and the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan for organizing this very important event and for their dedicated support to the cause of industrial decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you to all our high-level speakers for your insightful remarks. This was very appreciated. If we can give them one last round of applause as they move out of the stage. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, our next session is going to be a panel discussion, and I'm going to ask the panel members to join me on stage as I introduce them. We're going to have Ms. Carolina, so many names. Riedo. Ms. Carolina Riedo and Ms. Eva Marie Weber, and Mr. Gulshan Vashita. You can come to the stage. Join me, please. I'm away. Thank you very much for joining me. But before we start with the panel, we're going to start with a scene-setting presentation, and it will come from my esteemed colleague from the tech, Dietrem. Albert, come to the stage also, so that you can give us a scene setting. I don't know if you want to be there. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. So my name is Dietrem Oppelt. I'm chair of the UNFCCC Technology Executive Committee, so colleague of PEMI, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you today on this topic of industrial decarbonization and presenting the draft analysis for standards, labels, low carbon, near zero emission production and products in hard to abate sectors. So this topic is a long-standing topic for the tech. If we can go to the next slide. It's a key of our part of our working program, 2023-2027. And we have worked on several topics on that. And I must say, I'm also, as a representative also of the NDE Germany, I'm very pleased to be here, also like with the colleagues from Chile on the Climate Club, supporting this work also, and then also with UNIDO, supporting the work on industry for a long time, and also Japan working, for example, together with Germany, UK, and also India and others on the IDDI, the Industrial Decarbonization Initiative, which is also driving standards on hard-to-abate sectors, and which is also core of the topic we're doing here. So, and the work of the tech is really driving this forward and bringing it to all the countries, so really to scale it up. So as part of this, we have, for example, we have started in 2023 with a mapping of low carbon and near zero emission production and products in hard-to-abate sectors, which is covering at its core the chemical sector, which is focus of today, but also the steel and the cement sector. And then also we have developed a policy brief in 2024 for integrating hard-to-abate sectors into NDCs, which I think is absolutely core. And then also 2025-2026, we're working now together with UNIDO on driving the standards, because driving the standards is really what is behind bringing that topic forward. So with this, I would like to go to the next slide. So with this, we're working on this report, which is focusing on existing carbon standards and labels and emissions in those sectors, and also implementing, addressing all the gaps and the challenges, and then also pointing to key case studies of good examples which are practiced worldwide. So our aim is to provide a comprehensive overview which countries can draw upon, and then also contribute to the progress towards net zero. Next slide. So the key focus is really of the standards work, also the key hard-to-abate sectors, steel, cement, and petrochemicals. And they're called hard-to-abate sectors, and I think this is very important because they still rely heavily on fossil fuels. So the decarbonization is going slower here than it, for example, with the electricity sector and other sectors where we have much more progress. And also it's quite an intense in energy demand. And what also comes to it's a high upfront cost, and especially on the investment cycle. So these are long investments, probably with a lifetime of like 30 to 50 years. So if we want to be climate neutral 2050, we have to do the action now or yesterday. So there's no time to wait. And as we are behind globally with all the emissions and the progress, I think especially in this sector, we need to be much faster and need to accelerate. And that's what we as a tech also want to contribute towards that. And overall, so these sectors cannot be missed because they are the largest sector globally. So they account for more than 30% of global emissions. So there is no way we can avoid addressing this sector, and this work is really important for that. And the emissions are distributed, so between cement and steel are the top two sectors, but closely followed by the chemical sector. Okay, so next slide. So this is just giving you a little bit of a glimpse where we are in terms of like emissions from each of the sectors, and then also like on the pathways which exist. So so the cement sector, about 3.8 gigatons, and emissions come from two sources, from the use of energy and from the process emissions. So when in the calcination process, CO2 is basically released. And then, so the pathways are, for example, in the publications of IEA is giving us also a lot of information on the possible pathways here. And the ways to reduce emissions is first by clinker substitution, using cementous materials, supplementary SCMs, supplementary cementous materials. And then there's also, for example, LC-free is a great option, actually originally developed by India and by Cuba. And it's like kind of open source technology which can reduce emissions in the cement sector by over 30%, and actually it has negative costs. So it's actually something which is not makes sense only for the climate, but actually for all the operators. It's a low-hanging fruit, and it can be done by more than 50% of the cement plants globally. And then, of course, also energy efficiency, instead of using fossil fuels for the burning of cement kilns, using electricity powered by or generated by renewable sources. So, and then, of course, at the end comes the CCUS for the process emissions. Actually, in the cement sector, there's no other way than to take the CO2 emissions and then bury them in the ground, which is the more heavy and the most expensive part, but which also is unavoidable to address. Then in the steel sector, so we have two routes here. So the primary route of steel production with blast furnaces for primary steel, and then also the EAF rule from scrap steel. So with renewable energy power, the scrap steel can be produced already now with zero emissions. And then in the blast oven furnace sector, we need then alternative fuels like hydrogen. For example, in this DRI hydrogen process way. Then on chemistry, so I think one of the key parts here is to replace the fossil fuel as the feedstock for chemical production. And the alternative, or one of the alternatives, is to use hydrogen then as a feedstock together, like, for example, with CO2 from carbon sequestration, so in the CCUS process. So that can be then used also to reduce emissions. And as the colleagues have said, in some of the sectors, actually, we have technologies which are available today, which are existing. In some other parts, it's still in development, and we have to bit more invest in that to get to the point of full deployment. Next slide. So this is just, many thanks. Yeah, so this is about standards. And this is the core of the work which we are addressing now in our work in the technology executive committee, where we look at the standards. And this is something which then hopefully more countries can apply and use, and driving the decarbonization forward. So, for example, in the cement sector, we have for example, in Europe, we have the EU taxonomy, which is also having the thresholds on emissions, and it's very closely linked to the European emission trading system, and then also the CBAM. In the US, there's, for example, the Buy Clean initiative, which is also driving this forward, and there are technical standards supporting that. And then actually with the support of IDDI, which is where UNIDO is the secretariat, and I'm part of also that, we have developed together with GCCA, the Global Cement and Concrete Association, we have developed a standard and a label, and a label program which can be used and adapted by all the countries on the labeling of the cement carbon footprint, which is, I think, a great orientation, as you have a label on your fridge, and you can understand what is the carbon intensity or the energy efficiency of your fridge, to bring that to also the industrial sector, which is a very important then signal to the buyers of this kind of products. Then in the steel sector, we have like voluntary schemes driven by Responsible Steel, or also the World Steel Organization. And also there's a first mover coalition which is also driving that with global buyers to drive these kind of demand factors. Because I think in industry, it's really important. So the suppliers of the products, they have the problem, many of them, or most of them actually, are willing today to go to the low carbon pathways. But the problem is they need a market for that. And if there is no market, it's difficult to sell. So what we need here is both the supply signals and the demand signals. And the standards can be a very important driver for those demand sectors to trigger the demand that actually, for example, with green public procurement, that governments are demanding low carbon for their public buildings or streets and so on, the low carbon materials, which then will give the incentive for the industries to produce this low carbon element. So this is a very important bridge to overcome this gap. And then similar in the petrochemical sectors, it's a bit more complicated because the value chain is much more detailed. So I think here we need more detailed standards on the whole value chain, which is, for example, applying the standards of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol or the UNFCCC, which is also driving standards along the value chain. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is then, so for example here, one of the key elements driving this forward is then also the EPDs. So there's EPDs are environmental product declarations, and they show the environmental footprint, but most important also the carbon footprint of the products. And every manufacturer now worldwide, all the big cement and steel manufacturers, they have EPDs for their products. And this is really, and also chemical companies. So this is really important to have like a passport for your product, which shows the carbon footprint of the product. Because that allows to develop the standards based, or to apply standards for those, for these EPDs, and to drive green public procurement based on these standards. Next slide. Yeah, this is just to highlight some of the examples already mentioned in the EU. For example, we have the EU taxonomy. In Germany, as part of the EU, we also have the Leitmärkte, and for example, like the German steel industry has all established labels for their steel products, and all the the cement industry has also adopted the GCCA standard. So Germany is really driving that forward, both on the supply but also on the demand side. And then in the US, for example, we have the Buy Clean initiative, where, for example, California, and we had heard yesterday the governor from California, so they are driving that forward. And then China also has both an emission trading system for standards on all key heavy industries, including steel, cement, and chemicals. And then also it has standards for driving that forward. In India also we have an emerging emission trading system, also driving that forward. And this is the performance achieved trade mechanism, bringing all the suppliers of this kind of steel and cement into the scheme. And India has innovated together with Cuba this LC3 standard and is also adopting it in its own country. Then in Turkey is adopting the EU standards, and then also because there's a lot of trade relationships with EU driven by the CBAM, they are also adopting all these low carbon steel and cement sectors. Brazil has low carbon hydrogen and biofuel standards. UK is also part of the IDDI and then also driving that forward. And Indonesia is starting to introduce cement benchmarks and roadmaps. And Nigeria is also already has the energy transition plan and driving also development forward with CCUS. I think this is, if that would happen, that would be one of the first like big developing countries really to adopt it. That would be very encouraging. So they're really good examples, and we will also showcase that in the report, and we're discussing it further in the tech, and then will release it next year. So, and looking also for your feedback on all this and maybe more case studies coming from the audience today. So next slide. Yeah, so the key findings is really we have a rapid developing, which is encouraging. We have a very rapidly developing landscape. We have converging carbon standards in specific to each of the sectors. And then with this, we also have like benchmarks and elements which can be used like also for NDCs and MRVs. And there's still fragmentation there in each of the industries. There are discussions going on, but it's important to overcome these gaps and bridge them, and then to basically scale that up towards real product standards and compliance, and also to multilateral adaptation. Next slide. Yeah, so what are the priorities? So the priorities is for the policymakers really to work towards this harmonized standards, and then also to provide fiscal tools, and also like green public procurement, providing the demand for the early adoption of the industry, and then this can be also used from business to business later on. Then in industry, of course it's important that industry is also developing voluntary standards. For example, this labeling product from the Global Cement and Concrete Association is completely voluntary and is driven by the industry, so this is a great example. And they will also contribute to the MRV. And then also international actors. Yeah, so for them, like the Climate Club, as we heard today, but also the work of UNIDO, ISO, and then of course what we do also in tech. And the CDCN is driving that forward, and the collaboration is really essential for that. Next slide. Yeah, so I'm closely coming to the end. So what we still have the challenges to overcome, so there's still limited adoption of the market, especially in many developing countries. There's a lack of harmonization, and there's lack of policies to support the adaptation. And then also we need more that financial organizations, very importantly, adopt those standards and drive them forward, especially including also multilateral development banks. Next slide. Yeah, so with this, and I think that's one of the last slides, it's, yeah, what are the priorities? So the priorities, I think in the short term for the national policymakers is to come up with this green public procurement as a very important demand signal. In many economies, the governments are between 15 to 40% of the whole GDP. So what governments do really matters, and they can be a great example. And then also to shift to like building codes, because like, for example, 50% of the embodied carbon, when embodied carbon is the CO2, which is in the building materials, is coming from steel and cement globally in average. So it completely matters also to include those standards for steel and cement into the building codes. Yeah? That is also like a key demand driver, and then also to include it into the NDCs, so to that the countries are having the right capacity and to build that into their indices, as industry is one of the key emission sectors, and then also their low emission development strategies. This is a pathways to net zero. And then, yeah, for industry associations on working on those harmonized standards. For example, this example from cement and steel with the Global Cement and Concrete Association, or with World Steel or Responsible Steel. But also in the chemical industry. And then finance and investment to adopt the carbon intensity thresholds, and then make that also as a condition for the financing, and that there's also, like, for example, blended financing where there are grant components, for example, with lower interest rates encouraging the transition to those low carbon materials. Yeah, and last not least, of course, the multilateral collaboration. And we invite everybody here to continue to working with the tech and to bring that forward together with us. With this, I think that was the last slide. Okay, many thanks, and many thanks for your patience. And looking forward for discussions with the panel.
Thank you very much, Dietram, for that comprehensive presentation and valuable insight. So, as Dietram said, this will be finalized next year, the report, but there are also other publications that the tech is doing that you can find in TTClear that are similar to this. If you need any other information, we have the knowledge products, we have policy briefs that can also be checked too. Now I move to the panel, and before I move to our panel members, I'm going to say that the topic of discussion for this panel will be pathways for zero and low emission chemicals and petrochemical industries, overcoming policy and technological and market barriers. Now, the purpose of this panel discussion is to exchange practical solutions, identify strategies and partnership needed to decarbonize the chemical and petrochemical sectors. I'm going to ask the panel same questions, and they have 2 minutes to answer this question. I will start, I will just ask the question, and then we can answer as you are seated. The first question is, many experts argue that the absence of clear and supportive policies is a greater barrier to industrial decarbonization than financing. In your view, what are the policy frameworks or regulations that are most urgently needed to accelerate the transition of chemicals and petrochemical industries to low carbon pathways? For instance, should governments set stronger incentives, standards, or carbon pricing to drive action? You have 2 minutes. Caroline, I start with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the tech staff, national tech delegates, and my colleagues on the panel for letting me join. I'm here representing ABIQUIM, Brazil National Association of Chemical Manufacturers, and the International Council of Chemical Association, to which ABIQUIM is a member. ICCA, ABIQUIM, and member companies work hand in hand to identify technologies, barriers, and policies to support sector-level abatement solutions within the chemical sectors, and identify and promote products of chemistry that can enable global progress of climate mitigation and adaptation goals. Unlike other hard-to-abate industries, the chemical industries is not one product or 10 or 100 products. It's 10 of thousands of distinct chemistries manufactured by companies across the globe using the fuels and the feedstock and the resources available within the region and the country. Government by specific laws, regulations of policies governing in every aspect of our operation. So when you talk about the sector at the global level, there is no single technology pathway, supply chain formula, or no single set policy to drive sector action. That was the focus of ICCA 2024 study, Pathways for Global Chemical Industry to Climate Neutrality, and that also a key element of the New Brazil Pathway report you are releasing in this at COP30. Industry needs a range of emission reduction solutions suitable to the regional and national conditions for global progress. We look forward to discuss this further. Answering the question, this crucial question because the industry can have all ambitions in the world and cannot make a progress you need without enabling policies to provide 5 things. 1, regulatory flexibility, allow manufacturers to select and to optimize their energy feedstocks and the manufacturing technology mix to reflect local conditionals and constraints. For SCCA, this includes the pathway identified in 2024 report: biomass, plastic circular foodstock, hydrogen, fossil natural feedstock with CCS, energy efficiency, among others. It's all to the above strategy. In Brazil, regulatory flexibility is essential because our infrastructure is still under development. The study conducted by Abiquim this year shows that there are no single technologies pathway. You need to combine biomass, circular feedstocks, electrification, low-emission hydrogen, carbon capture, and energy efficiency. Therefore, policies must recognize the diversity and enable such solutions to advance according to the regional conditions and opportunities. In the case of the Brazil, policies such as a carbon pricing and the incentive for the demand for more sustainable products are important to accelerate and achievement the climate neutrality. Second, access to low-emission energy feedstocks and the supply chain creates a nationwide access to industrial-scale, low-emission electric and thermal energy for production process, and supporting connecting infrastructure as well as access to critical feedstocks. This is essential for more energy-intensive strategies like electrification, CCS, clean hydrogen, and would include circular feedstocks, biomass, etc. 3, infrastructure to connect manufacturers with energy, supply chains, and markets. If manufacturers can't access their products input or deliver low-carbon products to markets, their systems are unsustainable. 4, timely and practicable permitting. Support timely reviews and approvals of low emissions energy and manufacture projects. To change the way we manufacture chemicals, investor and companies need to know they can get new investments cited and approved in timely fashion. And the last, incentives for early investments and deployment. Government incentives and resources to support early investments and deployment of lower emission energy, manufacturing and distribution systems, and to help building demand for green premium markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eva. Give us your perspective, please.
So thank you, and thank you for the invitation to this important panel. For a brief context, I think SECAB and we're here as a living, walking example that it can actually be done. For those of you not familiar with SECAB, which might be a couple of you, it stands for Swedish Ethanol Chemistry, and we are a 100% fossil-free chemical company. We're in full-scale industrial production and has been for not exaggerating, 100 years. So this is what we have always done. So we make chemicals in the north of Sweden. We use a bio-based feedstock. We produce them in a production unit running on 100% green energy. Electricity, which is easier in the north of Sweden with hydropower than it might be in some other areas. But as you know, in the chemical industry, green steam is often the big obstacle, and we have 100% green steam as well. So we make today 3 platform chemicals for mostly European customers, but we are also exporting. And they are 100% fossil-free, and with the biogenic uptake, they are actually carbon negative leaving our gate. So we are an example that it can actually be done. And for us, sustainability and sustainable chemicals, that's our entire business. So looking at pathways and the question about what can be done on a regulatory base, we want to send a signal that this is happening, this is a business. However, if there are those who want to see it go faster, I think the introduction was really great about now it's time to accelerate, then of course there are policies that could really make a difference. And I think the biggest obstacle today for us to be sold out of our fossil-free product, it's the state of the economy. So I mean, the best policy action would be competitiveness and actually having the economy turn. But apart from that, I think it's important to focus on demand creation. I think that is the vital part. Everything else is also important, but I think to really make headway, we got to focus on making it a better business case for everyone involved in this chain. And I think that starts with public procurement, for sure. That's the low-hanging fruit. I also think looking at minimal sustainability requirements in different kind of quotas or bio-based mandates, that will be a game changer and something that will really make a difference. But however, in implementing those kind of schemes, it's really important, and I was glad to hear your presentation, because if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. And there has to be standards, and there has to be the devil's in the details. And I think transparency is so important, because there aren't a lot of actual competitors to us, because we're the only producers of the bio-based versions of our products. Our competitors are fossil chemicals coming to the party dressed in green clothing. So, and I mean, there's clearly mass balance has a function in transitioning the chemical industry. However, it really needs to be contained, because when it's not contained and strict, it's really just slowing down the transition. And I think transparency is the key. We use ISO 14067 for our product carbon footprints, and we do it. We don't only, if you're buying from us, you don't get the number for the ISO 14067. We publish the full report on our website. If you're curious in what goes into our carbon footprints, feel free, because we have nothing to hide. So I think demand creation will create a difference, but demand creation done with transparency, because as we all know, creative bookkeeping not only for finance departments anymore, and this is really something we got to nip in the bud to make sure we do it right.
Thank you.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Eva, for sharing CCAB's work, and it's really very proud Chief Sustainability Officer talking very proudly about the work that you do. So my intervention comes off the transparency part, which is also shared in the presentation. I think last month we had China, Japan, and Korea sitting together and discussing about standards and MRV standards and the interoperability of those. I think what we can probably on the stage itself, there's an example of something that could be interoperable, maybe within the country. I'm talking more from a country-to-country interoperability perspective, but this is a good example on how this can be achieved. And on demand creation, I'll get deeper into into sector-based work with India. At GDGI, we've had a lot of discussions at several levels on how can we create hydrogen offtake guarantees from the procurement side of things. Now this is very similar, but at the same time different from what happened at the renewable stage, where we are saying that the producers from the green hydrogen perspective shouldn't be looking for buyers, and that should be probably pulled at the government level. There are ongoing discussions of those procurement or assured offtake from, but also particularly for green hydrogen, looking at multiple buyers within the country, and of course the export potential out of the country. So that is one that could probably get the scale and demand that is much needed. On the energy efficiency, there's been a constant discussion on who is aggregating. Hard-to-abate sectors, a lot of energy demand could come out of one single outlay, but there's a lot of benefits, particularly on the cost of implementation of energy efficiency solutions when you look at aggregation model and looking at an industry as a whole. So definitely something that needs a policy and also an institutional arrangement per se on who is really the aggregator, because solutions are there, because the policies are there. There's no way that I think everybody here would agree that energy efficiency is definitely the way to go, but at what cost? And who's really assuring the guarantees? The MRV solutions, which was discussed in the presentation, I think is very, very crucial, particularly in the aspect of energy efficiency. So something that we on the ground are trying to work with our member countries, and coming with practical solutions, countries like Thailand and others, looking at institutional engagements, arrangements where we could look at policy solutions and driving it from the ministries to the utilities and then going to the industry level. So that's our take on the policy side. And on your question, I was re-looking at the question because I didn't capture it. I think just there cannot be an or here, right? So your question is, for instance, should government set stronger incentives, standards, or carbon pricing to drive action? There cannot be an or. There has to be, we have to set stronger incentive standards and carbon pricing to drive actions. And countries are taking measures. I just mentioned about the China, Japan, Korea high ambition coalition that we're trying to set up, where China representative mentioned that they have come up with, not for chemical, petrochemical sector, but they have come up with sectoral pricing, carbon pricings in October, in early October, which will be publicly announced soon. So the point is, there are actions, but not at scale. Definitely something that we all need to work together on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to now ask the second question. So I have 3 questions. I'm going to ask the second question, and maybe we can start with you, Goshen, so that we just come back like this. Whilst you still have the mic, several transformative technologies and practices have been mentioned, such as using green hydrogen as feedstock, electrifying chemical process, improving energy efficiency, and adopting circular economy models. Which of these or other innovations do you believe hold the greatest promise for cutting emission in the chemical and petrochemical sector, and how can we scale them quickly and cost effectively?
Well, I think I would be, again, there cannot be an or. We need everything. But, and I think I'll be wronged if I say cost effective today, but I think the technology that we have to look at is green hydrogen or sustainable feedstock, which has been discussed before, without a doubt. But in my mind, at least, that would be transformative in terms of really looking at reducing the carbon footprints from the hard-to-abate sectors. Now, the challenge is on the hydrogen side. Again, I think I already mentioned is how do we really pull in the demand, right? And how do we really look at, because look at the countries like Korea, constantly looking to buy hydrogen, right? Because they need to meet their own NDC targets, to be honest. But at what cost, right? And there are, of course, ongoing discussions and ongoing efforts in all aspects, particularly for hard-to-abate sectors. Now, the energy efficiency is definitely something, I would say, a lower hanging fruit today as we speak, but by far, in my opinion, I think green hydrogen is going to be and is actually, there is a lot happening on green hydrogen, and companies and factories are taking that up to reduce their carbon footprint.
Thank you. Eva? What's your perspective on
Yeah,
that?
thank you. And I agree. Obviously, it has to be all of the above because the chemical industry being so late to the sustainability party, it really has to happen everything all at once. I would clearly, for us, I think looking at what is available and what is scalable in the short term should probably be the focus. And bio-based materials and feedstocks, that's a good starting point because it is available. We know it works. I would like to raise a small sort of warning that let's not get stuck in an innovation loop because I think all of the new technologies and innovations, they are going to be needed. I do see a small risk that you start a project that hopefully might work in 10 years, and that's sort of your sustainability comfy blanket. I can't tell you how many meetings I'm in where I'm like, okay, you're buying this chemical today. I can offer it to you fossil-free tomorrow. It would reduce your carbon footprint with 50% right off the bat. And I get the answer, yeah, but we have this initiative, and that's our sustainability focus, and it's going to be ready in 2034. And I'm like, great, you do that, but you could also do something that would make a difference right here, right now. And I think that we're sort of overlooking what is possible in order to find what's perfect. And I think we need to be able to have two thoughts in our head at the same time. In Sweden, we like to say a little less talk, a little more ice hockey. And I think what we really need right now is a little more ice hockey in the chemical industry.
Thank you so much. Carolina, what's your take on that?
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. Circular hydrogen is potential to deliver deep emissions reductions rapidly and cost effective. Advanced nuclear, particular small modular reactors, offer reliable, low emissions baseload power that can be deployed in industrial areas where grid capacity and renewable options may be constrained. This technology addresses both the energy intensity and the reliability needs for chemical manufacturing, enable electrification of process without sacrificing operational stability. Another example would be circular hydrogen produced from natural gas using advanced carbon capture and recycling methods. This approach enables the continual use of existing natural gas infrastructure while dramatically lowering carbon intensity. Supporting scalable electrification and low emissions manufacturing is industrial settings. In developing economies, energy efficiency remains an essential solution for reducing emissions, especially in regions with limited infrastructure. Brazil, for example, has natural advantages, biomass, industrial clusters, and strong renewable energy potentials. But we will only translate these advantages in competitiveness if industrial energy and climate policies are designed in a coordinated, practicable, and scalable way.
Thank you very much.
If I may, sorry.
Yeah.
Before we just remember a few points. Sorry for. No, particularly on the viability aspect, because yes, we said clean hydrogen, but how, right? And there are a few case studies that we're trying to work on, and I just want to share some positive out of that is countries that have excess hydro. For example, two cases that I particularly engage on is Nepal and Laos, where there's a lot of curtailment or the potential of having a lot of excess hydro for both the countries. And Nepal, remember, imports a massive amount of fertilizers, like all of it. So this is a great potential where the cost of renewable energy, where they're not using it, is going to be almost nil, right? Because their energy demands are fulfilled, and they have excess. So this is from an opportunity perspective on cost reduction. We need to look at these assets, the natural assets, where you can create a lot of almost negligible cost of renewable source, which can then be used for producing green hydrogen and then exporting. Just a point in time to make that is that the smaller countries and smaller economies like Nepal and Laos also have that potential to produce green hydrogen for their own consumption and also for exports. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Eva, I know you don't want to talk about looking ahead, the future, 5 to 10 years. You want to talk about now. But I have a question for the future. What near-term actions or collaboration would you prioritize in the next 5 to 10 years to put the chemicals and petrochemical industries on trajectory towards net zero emissions? For example, are there pilots? Are there pilot projects, public-private partnerships, or in international initiatives that you think should be launched or scaled up coming out of COP to maintain momentum?
Yeah, and I think you really said it, that the key word is collaboration, because this is true for all industries, but especially for the chemical industry. We really need to work together, because with this long supply chains, change isn't going to come by itself. And I think most people, and definitely the people in this room, if you go to your local building shop and you go for a can of paint, you would be willing to pay a small green premium for the can of paint with a lower CO2 footprint. But for that can of paint, for that green premium, to transfer back to the acetaldehyde that I produce, that's in that very same can of paint, it's 4 or 5 steps in the supply chain. And to make that travel, that's a challenge. And it's going to demand a lot from us. And I mean, that's what we're here at COP doing, talking to the end user who probably doesn't think about their acetaldehyde needs every day. So we really need to raise awareness. But also, I mean, it demands a lot from us, from our sales teams needs to work differently and talk not only to our customers, but to our customers' customers and customers' customers' customers. But that also requires something from the brand owners who, I mean, the ones who are finally claiming the green premium need to be open to partnerships, not only working with their tier 1 suppliers, but actually building something through the supply chains to actually start from the everything starts with a sustainable chemical, and I think that was really clear in all the keynote addresses. No change will come if the chemical industry doesn't change. And no one will reach the science-based targets, definitely not for 2030, definitely not for 2050, if they don't change their chemical supply. But they really need to send the signals and work with us in order to make this happen. So I think collaboration is what I think we hope we all take from this COP, and both as a general principle and actual collaborations, because sustainable chemicals, they don't materialize from thin air. You really need to get the ball rolling, and I think that could be a takeaway from COP, more balls rolling.
Thank you so much. Collaboration, Mochira as well. So maybe, Carolina, you give us your perspective?
Over the next 5 to 10 years, our priority should be create concrete conditions to accelerate projects that are already technically viable, but still depend on coordination, infrastructure, and clear policy science. Based on Webkin study, we need to advance to renewable energy infrastructure, ensure security of supply competitiveness. It's also essential to strengthen circular value chains, increase the viability of recycling feedstocks, support by regulatory harmonization, efficiency reverse, logistics, and most importantly, incentives for the use of the circular content in final products. The study shows that circularity is now one of the most consistent pillars for emission reduction in the short and the medium term. We need to prioritize in industrial scale pilots and demonstration projects, including integrated carbon capture and utilization solutions, biomass-based roads, and electrification of process. If you are able to align infrastructure, planning, industrial policy, and the market development for low-carbon products, you will place the chemical and the petrochemical sector on realistic and competitive in a pathway toward net zero. When I talk about the chemical manufacturing, you mentioned again advanced in the nuclear. There are projects that will be coming online in the time frame and can be a real game changer of industrial manufacturing sector. Renewable energy generation with battery storage can be available options for rapid deployment of new generation. I think the 5 to 10 years, the technology around the battery storage will be a place where we will be used more utilities. These strategies are require significant capital investments and so early funding, financing, practicable permitting are all necessary to building a new manufacturing system.
Thank you so much. Goshen, you have the last word on this question.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying that we can probably take a moment to look at the past and then look into the future. It's not that we haven't done this, right? There's enough evidence of us proving the renewable energy space, which has made the shift. It's just about the time that we took to move from a very high cost of renewable energy to what very, very affordable costs that we see now. Just that we don't have the luxury of time, right? So that we have to shorten that the innovation space, the policy space, and the encouragement really lies is that we have done this. It's just about trying to see what can be taken on board from the innovation, from the technological innovation side, from the policy sides. I should not make notes. I forget things. Gosh, where am I? No, so this particular point that I'm trying to make is linked to there is enough technological advancements. Countries are making efforts. I mean, I'm very, very happy to know that that the session continues in Japan. There's a lot of momentum within Japan, particularly on green hydrogen, and the efforts that are happening, particularly in the Japanese space, and their implementation strategies within ASEAN, that some that I'm aware of, is very, very encouraging. Some that we really are following closely and would like to engage with the Japanese entities and we are actually working with them with a number of entities on the ground. Now, the space that has to move again, if we need to reduce or shorten that time, it has to be through interoperable, transparent standards and MRV systems. That I think, in my opinion, is a must, and that is what is really going to move the needle that much more faster. Now, just to think of an example, just to draw some parallels, is Europe's voluntary carbon market is $800 billion, whereas all of Asia's is far less than that, and that's simply because the standards there are not interoperable to the other markets. So we need to really look at what are the challenges from an interoperability perspective, and how do we really come up with the transparency measures. I think it was really well spelled out in the presentation before. We really need to partner and bring in partnerships within the country and international communities to really look at the interoperability part of it and the transparency that is really needed in the standards and MRV systems, which is going to really move the needle quicker and towards what we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists for your insights, very, very valuable insights. I just want to ask, is there anyone who wants to ask a question from the floor to our panelists? Yes, if you can introduce yourself and your affiliation, and then ask your question. Can we have a roving mic, please? Just wait for a mic so we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Delgar Ishtinsana. I'm a reporter with Chemical and Engineering News in the US. And my question is, when we talk about these different pathways, whether it's from like the ICCA report like you mentioned, or from the International Energy Agency for getting the chemical industry to lower or to near zero emissions or net zero emissions, like how much of those pathways rely on purchasing carbon credits and offsets, and for that component of those pathways, how will the industry make sure that those are actually, quality credits or offsets, and that they are actually lowering global greenhouse gas emissions in the end?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all right. I think you can all take a bite at that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's about transparency and standards and making sure and it's important for us producing, actually telling you what we do, but also important for those purchasing, asking the right questions and having their own sort of sustainability framework, preferably relying on some sort of international system so there can be a comparison. But I think what we also need to do is we're all here to move away from fossil feedstocks. I think we also need to move away from fossil as the reference point for all systems. Because I think every system is made by fossil for fossil, and we need to level the playing field and to really make fossil free the norm. And I think that is something that really goes through all standards, all accounting, everything. The burden of evidence is always heavier on the sustainable option, which is fine. We're happy to provide it, but I think that's one, moving away from fossil as a norm in standards, in data, but also in pricing. And I think that's the next big part that we haven't had the time to touch upon today, but we really need to move away from fossil pricing index being the norm from which you buy, because that's really hurting all of us.
And the ICCA focus has been to help members identify the broader range of technology and policy options to enable industry's progresses based on unique national, local, and operational conditions and constraints. We look to our members to set their goals, technology pathway, and the national policy recommendation, because these countries, each countries, there are technologies, pathways different each other. So ICCA and the BICIN help the members to identify what the better pathways to the business.
I think it's a very good question, but pathways are pathways. They're more guiding pillars, on how transition is going to really happen. And I'm a firm believer in localization, or really, when you adapt such a transition measure, it has to be localized to each country, and sometimes each at an organization level. So. If I touch upon the question on how much carbon needs to be bought versus others, it really depends on the local conditions of where your operations are, and what are the conditions, and what can really be done in that particular jurisdiction that you're working. So yeah, mostly localization is what I think about.
Thank you so much. Can we give our panelists a round of applause for their valuable insight? And thank you for all your participation. I think just to summarize key takeaways from all this, From the discussions, we have learned that clear policies and standards, cutting-edge technologies like green hydrogen, strong public-private collaborations are all essential for decarbonization. And we also learned about having different pathways. And maybe just to say that all this that we have got from this session will contribute to broader COP30 objectives and the tech ongoing work, as well as their rolling work program and the inputs into the tech's final analysis on the standards and labels for the low emission industry report that Ditram presented on. And maybe just to say tomorrow, is it tomorrow? The next session is tomorrow, yes. Tomorrow there's another session that will delve deeper into mobilizing partnerships and finance to implement these solutions. So if you can all try and make it to the Japan pavilion for tomorrow. But thank you very much for all your participation. The meeting is adjourned.